Good morning. This is the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. It is March 1st. Welcome to March, everybody. This is our weekly business agenda. We will start with a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Ackerman.
Here.
Commissioner Bogue, Commissioner Cross,
Present.
Commissioner McGowan,
Here.
Commissioner Mesner,
Here.
Commissioner Oath, Commissioner Robbins.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 out of 7 commissioners present.
Great. Good to see everybody. Welcome. The first matter on our agenda is commissioner comments. I would like to let folks know that in terms of comments, the commissioners are going down to the Raton Basin on March 6th, this next Monday. We will have a public meeting at Trinidad State College at 4 p.m. I will give a short presentation about where we've been over the last 4 years and where we may be going. We also will take public comment. If folks want to sign up for public comment, please do so on our website. The meeting will be somewhat old school. We're not going to have it via virtual, and we're all going to be in person. So we look forward to that and look forward to seeing folks down there in Trinidad. On Tuesday, March 7th, the commissioners will be doing several field tours. And then on Wednesday, March 8th at 7:30 in the morning, we will be doing a local government designee breakfast at the hotel we're staying at, the Holiday Inn there. We've also asked elected officials to potentially participate with us so we can have some discussions, and that'll take place Wednesday morning, March 8th, and then we'll head back to Denver after that. This is an effort of the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission to get out and visit folks in the field, visit with our field inspectors and our other folks, and to get some perspective on what's happening out in the field. So commissioners, wear your boots. It's probably going to be muddy, and we'll look forward to having that time with the folks down in Trinidad. So that was my comments at this time. AG Davenport, did you want to weigh in?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. I was just going to note that there's no planned decision making for the commission on any part of this field trip. If I can just note that, that's all I chimed in to do.
Yep. No decision making, just information gathering. Does that sound about right? Great. Other commissioners with comments? All right, seeing none, we will move into the next matter of our agenda, which is the consent agenda. Does anyone have questions with regard to consent? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve consent?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second to approve consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Next matter on our agenda is a cumulative impacts report presentation from Director Julie Murphy.
Good morning, commissioners, and if you can give us just a minute, I think Angelica is going to be running the slides for me, which she is doing in expert speedy time. So thank you for your engagement on this issue. As I think I want to start by acknowledging that in the midst of staff finalizing this 2022 cumulative impacts report, we've had a lot of robust discussion about what the commission is or should be doing on cumulative impacts, and those have currently been on a parallel track. And at the conclusion of my comments, I want to talk about how I foresee integrating those two processes into a singular conversation as we look to the future. So with that, next slide, please. I'm very excited to provide this report to everybody. I think it really is functioning as we designed it, and in year 2 we're starting to see how that plays forward. The report itself was published on the COGCC website yesterday, February 28th, and it's really intended to first establish a baseline for a cumulative impacts analysis and then inform the commission on of data, trends, and information to be considered in your ongoing evaluation and assessment of the potential for cumulative impacts consistent with Senate Bill 19181. Just a minute. This was prepared independent, as I noted, of the stakeholder outreach process that's been led by Commissioner Ackerman to date in light of the petition filed by Wild Earth Guardians last year. I think that the feedback that we've received both in that process and after looking at this report, I think that both pieces of information or both sources of information will be important in the Commission's consideration about how to continue to evaluate and address the potential for cumulative impacts. Today, I want to provide you with a very high-level summary of what has changed on some level, right? What do we actually see with 2 years of data? And talk about some of the ways that it could be used. In addition, I want to note that this report does include a few new pieces of information that were not included in the 2021 report as requested by commissioners. One of the key, I think, things to keep in mind is that this year the commission approved 3 cumulative impacts reports. All of those operators agreed to submit the CIDR related data or the cumulative impacts related data for the individual locations within those comprehensive area plans as part of the underlying OGDPs. So while we have the comprehensive area plan approved, we don't actually have the cumulative impacts data related to the actual locations because we wanted to ensure that that information was gathered consistently across all proposed development in Colorado. So we will see the information related to CAP related development with the individual OGDP themselves instead of as part of this year's report. As ever, I want to thank COGCC staff for their unrelenting efforts trying to pull this all together in addition to their day jobs. I think this report really does provide a comprehensive look at what the commission is doing and how everything is working on the cumulative impact side. And I think it's a unique process to Colorado. In addition to the hard work of staff, I would be remiss if I did not note the important efforts that have been put forward by key members from the Air Pollution Control Division, Colorado Energy Office, and Colorado Parks and Wildlife staff. They've been integral in making sure that we have a more comprehensive look across our different divisions within the state of Colorado on a number of these issues. And of course, Sarah Bartlett, who is working for us as a contractor, has really been integral in facilitating and bringing forward the perspective of staff and our different divisions across the state in this report. Next slide, please. And so now I'd like to jump into the data or the report itself. Again, it was published yesterday, and so I don't expect anybody to be familiar with it today. And similarly, I don't expect this to be the end of the conversation about the 2022 report, and only that it is the beginning. So as a quick comparison between 2021 and 2022, in 2021, there were 7 OGDPs approved by the commission. In 2022, there were 47 approved. So we have a significant increase in the amount of data available to the commission. These 47 OGDPs are associated with 77 oil and gas locations or Form 2As and around 838 wells or Form 2s. And I think in the next few slides, I want to give an example of how the new information in this year's report looks and feels now that we have 2 years of data. These are examples only, and they're not more important than any of the other data in the report, but I also don't want to take us page by page through a 75-page report this morning. I think that might overwhelm anybody's ability to absorb information. I do want to note, and I don't want to get into the statistical relevance of this, but right now we have 2 years of data. So we're starting to see information on how it correlates year over year, but 2 data points usually really is not representative of a trend. We kind of want to get 3-4 years of data to understand if there's a bigger perspective, but we can start, shining some light on consistencies or inconsistencies across different OGDPs with 2 years of data. With that, next slide, please. So one of the examples I wanted to bring forward is around water use. And again, this is estimated water use during drilling and completions activities. On the right, you can see a comparison of the year-over-year activities between 2021 and 2022. Again, I would look forward to receiving a few more years of data to understand what those trend lines look like or do not look like. And I think that the report is also defined to new operating areas and represent differences in operations, right? Well characteristics, geologic formations, and proposals for development. Again, this year's report did not include a comparison of these estimates to actuals. And this is an important theme that we need to keep in mind as we're evaluating this report, is that when the information comes into COGCC, they are estimated impacts. It's not until we actually get to construction, to drilling, to completions, to have actual information about what actually was used or occurred during the process. And as OGDPs that were approved by the Commission in 2021, 2022, and going forward move into construction, drilling, and completion, we'll start to have the actual data to compare back, in addition to looking at estimates across different basins or across different operations. So there's, again, I'm very excited about this report because it starts to show us the power of the tool that the Commission developed. And I think it's operating as designed. I know there are many folks who would want to design it differently, but for what we did design in 2020, we're seeing great results in terms of what it can show for us in a year-over-year basis, and by starting to define the baseline. This tool will only become more powerful as we move into getting the actual data and can compare not only estimates to estimates across basins and across proposed developments, but also can compare the actuals to estimates and understanding why there's a gap between the two, if any. So I really do look forward to continuing to gather this data, to mine this data, and to help it refine how Colorado looks at and understands oil and gas development and its related impacts. So I think I've probably beaten that point sufficiently at this point in time. So next slide, please. This is another example of data that is now available in this report that was not available in the 2021 report. One of the commissioner requests in December was a more detailed review of proximity to residential building units for proposed or approved oil and gas development in 2022. As this chart shows, the majority of residential building units within 1 mile of an approved oil and gas location within an OGDP are greater than 2,000 feet. And so again, we're exploring what this chart is representative to me of what additional information the commissioners may want staff to collect throughout a year and then report back on. And this is an example of that. Next slide, please. Talking now about wildlife. In 2022, the commission approved the first oil and gas development plans with locations within a high priority habitat. And so this 2022 report includes a more significant discussion of the high priority habitat review. And so up on this slide now are 2 examples of the new information that's available in this section and new information as compared to 2021. Given that the changes in the oil and gas development plans that were approved between 2021 and 2022. Next slide, please. So we had a lot of discussion in 2021 with the commissioners about what information we could include about statewide well information. And so this is being integrated into the report this year. And this is related to statewide well information in terms of SPUD, PA'd, and net well counts by county. I think that, again, we talked a lot about making sure we were trying to gather information about, are we seeing more wells, fewer wells, in what basins, and how is that working? And again, pursuant to 904A7, there's an opportunity to gather additional data and have commissioners request additional information. So I want to flag as we move forward that section 907A7 under the rule, or sorry, 904A7 under the rule can be used by the commission and director to integrate new concepts into the report in future years. And that we will be moving that information, assuming that it stays in, continuing to build that year-over-year information. In addition to the statewide well counts that are shown here, the section also includes statewide production, well liquids unloading trends, and information on aerial and ground-based monitoring conducted by APCD. So this is a particularly rich section of the report, and I look forward to folks taking a look at it. digesting it and then discussing, did we strike the right balance of information gathered? Is it understandable? And that those comments, of course, apply to the entirety of the report as we move forward. Next slide, please. As I noted in my opening remarks, COGCC could not have prepared and finalized this report without key work and really focused efforts from the Air Pollution Control Division staff. And so I have to again say thank you for their contributions. These sections in the report summarize many of the reports published by the Air Pollution Control Division or the Colorado Energy Office, and they often recap presentations that have been given to the Commission on these different air quality related topics. The sections elaborate on certain questions posed by the Commission in December, such as oil and gas contribution to ozone, as an example. And I think the summary of this information could be a presentation in itself, but I don't want to, again, try to highlight the entirety of the report. I would look forward to everybody reviewing it, digesting it, and then coming back and having a more focused conversation about how we interpret it and how we want it to continue to evolve. I think the one update I want to provide is that the Air Pollution Control Division staff continue to improve the oil and gas inventory process for emissions. And we are continuing to discuss within staff and with you the value of looking at the site or air quality emissions information, the estimates again, compared to the actuals that are reported back to APCD. Again, much like my discussion around water use, we don't have the actuals associated with oil and gas development plans that were approved in 2021 with estimates to be able to compare estimates to actuals, but I look forward to those being available and helping us again continue to refine and iterate our regulatory process. While we are waiting for that data, COGCC and APCD staff continue to work closely together on improving the accuracy of our CIDR data and coordinating with each other on the logistics to be able to compare this information in future reports. I know that both the legislature and governor have been really focused on making sure that COGCC and APCD are in close coordination. And to me, this 904A report, or this cumulative impact report, really reflects a lot of the collaboration and the work product that is going on behind the scenes between the two organizations. So again, my thanks to APCD. Next slide, please. The report also, as is consistent or required by the rules, flags technologies and reports that have come out in the calendar year to reflect evolutions in the industry and how it's being regulated, what technologies are available, et cetera. And there are many ways in which that evolution is occurring. The purpose, of course, of keeping up to date on how the industry itself is evolving is so that the Commission itself can stay apprised of what those evolutions, innovations are and how they're working, and how we can continue to ensure that Colorado operators strive for best practices. This is a difficult section for staff to prepare because we are not actually on the ground with vendors evaluating what technologies are being provided and how they're working. So we're continuing to work across industry to understand those different technologies. And also we look forward to different, innovative companies presenting during lunch and learns or in other formats about what technologies are up and coming. We staff continue to accept the technical information related to each of these sections of the report. And similarly for technical reports or peer-reviewed reports, we look to provide those into or include those here as well. Next slide, please. So kind of looking forward, I provided a very, very high level of some of the places where the report has changed from 2021 to 2022 to highlight that how iterative and flexible this process can be to meet the needs of this Commission. I think that it's a great testament to the data dump and continuing to understand how to make that data dump relevant and understandable to the public and to the Commission. And so now as we look forward to future reports, I want to highlight a couple of things. I think that as this report continues to be published, we expect to be able to continue to learn about cumulative impacts. There are some data limitations, as I noted, especially as it relates to actuals versus estimates. And there are a couple of other notes on the screen about some of the limitations. There are additional requests made by the commission, such as emission benefits from P&A activities, and we're continuing to look, we staff are continuing to look at how to incorporate these. But to be able to accomplish that vision, we may need to change how some data is collected. And we're also looking at what other form changes would continue to advance the ongoing evaluation and understanding of cumulative impacts. And so this is me really foreshadowing my next slide about how do we integrate the process that was initiated with the Wild Earth Guardians petition, resulting in the commission's cumulative impact stakeholder work, with what staff has learned out of the 2022 report, and how do we bring these two processes together. So with that, next slide, please. So this slide is appropriately titled Next Steps in Integration. As I noted or foreshadowed, this is really what are the upcoming processes. So to date, staff's preparation of the 2022 cumulative impacts report has been run independently of the commission's work on cumulative impacts, to hear from stakeholders, to understand what changes stakeholders believe are appropriate and how the commission can or integrate those within the limits of its authority. So I believe the next step is on March 15th, Commissioner Ackerman will be sharing with the commissioners kind of his synopsis, digestion, and understanding of the different themes, buckets, or concepts within stakeholders' feedback over the last couple of months on cumulative impacts. I think that that's a really relevant and rich body of work to look to also understand what changes to the cumulative impacts report we could begin integrating in the short term. We are looking for a date in April, and I think it has been confirmed as April 10th, and I'm sure Mimi will pop up and correct me or confirm, to have a very focused commission hearing on the 2022 cumulative impacts report. The purposes of that hearing would be, one, to invite public comment about the report, its limitations, its misses, its opportunities, how it has helped us understand more about cumulative impacts, and also an opportunity for the commissioners to discuss with the director, me, Rule 904, what changes we would like to see in the 2023 report, and start to explore, again, how we can continue to iterate this report as was contemplated by Rule 904 when it was adopted in the fall of 2020. So again, March 15th is really keyed into the feedback from the stakeholders in the cumulative impacts report. April would be really keyed into the 2022 report. And with those two pieces of feedback, I would look forward to working very closely with Commissioner Ackerman to help set up a roadmap for the next steps in the cumulative impact stakeholder process, right? And I think that's the opportunity to really bring in folks who want to, get their, roll up their sleeves and really get into the process, into the conversation about what are potential cumulative impacts, how can the commission evaluate or address them consistent with 181. In one bucket, I think that there are also some form changes that we should be exploring that were reflected both in the comments that I've heard and staff's work through the 2022 report that might be on a slightly different track. So that's how I see this all kind of coming to fruition, and coming together into a singular conversation before the commission that is forward-looking, that continues to advance our understanding and knowledge of cumulative impacts, and continues to reflect the important work given to us by the legislature around evaluating and addressing the potential for cumulative impacts. So I think that's a great way to move to our next slide and start closing out my comments. Again, I wanted to thank so many folks for their involvement in bringing this report to life. It is over 70 pages, it's robust, it's detailed, and it's really driven by the data that we are collecting as part of our cumulative impacts database, or CIDR. This is part of an ongoing feedback loop, right? We saw changes from 2021 to 2022, even in how the report is gathering data and presenting information. This is intended to be I guess it's a colloquial term now, an evergreen document or a feedback loop or iterative to reflect and respond to the changes and needs of the commissioners, recognizing that we are building first a baseline of information upon which we can use to then evaluate trends and then make future decisions. So in sum, my staff and I look forward to the continued evolution of the data and strategy and the report that reflects this commission's work on this important topic. I also look forward to continuing the discussions about cumulative impacts and understanding how the commission can grow and continue in its evaluation and assessment of the potential for cumulative impacts. And that process should take us through this spring. And I look forward to, the engagement from stakeholders on how to continue to advance this. So with that, Chair, I've talked a lot for 10 straight minutes. I can't see anybody. So if people have questions, I look forward to taking them now. And also just want to close with the key thought that this, again, is not the end of the conversation. The report was released yesterday. I wanted to give a high-level overview of where we are today. I wanted to provide a path forward for how we ultimately integrate these two related cumulative impacts processes as we move forward, and then open the report and the dialogue up to you and our stakeholders to digest the report itself, and then come back and have a thoughtful conversation in early April about what it says, what it doesn't say, what it should say. And with that, Chair, I will close my remarks.
Great. Thank you very much, Director Murphy, for the remarks. I know that all the commissioners and all of our stakeholders look forward to, diving into the details of the report that was released yesterday. I'm looking around to see if anybody has initial questions. Commissioner Cross has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director, for that presentation. I thought it was very helpful. I just wanted to, as you mentioned, we just got it yesterday, so I did look through it, but I haven't looked through it in great detail. So I wanted to try and ask a couple clarifying questions. First, the slide you brought up about the wells that are being plugged and abandoned versus the wells that are being they're actually being drilled and approved with the OGDPs. I just want to confirm that's specifically plugged and abandoned wells in the proposals, not wells that are being plugged and abandoned regardless of the proposals going on.
Actually, these are actuals, Commissioner. Thank you.
Those are actual. Okay. So with actuals, and it's ones that actually got plugged and abandoned in 2022. There will actually be additional wells plugged and abandoned as part of the proposals as well.
Right. I think we're using a lot of Form 5 information. I think that the report does reflect those plugging numbers that are specific to commitments via OGDP or CAP. But in terms of tracking the net movement of wells, we're using actuals in this slide.
So overall, getting a lot less wells and kind of out with the old, in with the new. Sort of, okay, great. And then with the actual report, I just wanted to ask a couple clarifying questions. The first was slide 14, which for everyone's edification was talking about average OGDP location and condensate storage capacity. And I was noticing that there was actually a large decrease, especially in the Front Range, about storage capacity. And for this one, these are talking about what was approved in 2021 versus what was approved in 2022. Is that correct? I'm sorry to kind of put you in the spot there.
Yeah, sorry. This report was focused on those that were approved in 2022.
Okay. So ideally, looking at this, we should be able to understand that the amount of, particularly with respect to storage capacity, so we're looking at less and less tanks on locations that are being approved.
I think as we compare 2021 to 2022, yes, but my one caution is that 2 data points often don't really make a trend.
Yeah.
And so we want to have a little bit more macro understanding of the proposals of kind of in a year-over-year basis to look at what that trajectory actually looks like.
Okay. And then the last one, and for this, just as a forewarning, it may make more sense to actually pull up the report if you have it in front of you. But on page 46 of the report, it's talking about production NOx source distribution. And I just wanted to specifically look at the Front Range here, and it's a little hard to tell the difference in some of the colors. And so I just want to confirm that for the Front Range, we're looking at a lot of the NOx, the 157.5 is from the stationary engines. And then just trying to understand what some of the at least the major sources are here and looking at these colors.
If you can give me just a minute to get that
Sure.
pulled up. And I think it's page 46.
Correct.
Okay. And maybe I'll try to share my screen on this.
I think with the pre-production, it was a little bit easier to discern the colors, but it was a little bit harder with the.
Is this the right page?
Yes.
Okay, great. And so your question is,
Just really want to make sure that it is the stationary engines or turbines that for the front range is making up the 157.5.
yeah,
Okay. I think that was a big part of it. Trying to discern, because there's a lot of different colors, a lot of different sources, potential sources out there. So just trying to make sure that as we kind of look at it and how we should think about applications moving forward, that I'm looking at the correct source here.
that's helpful. And maybe the takeaway that I can have from this is when we have graphs with a lot of detail, let them be their own page.
Okay, perfect. Those were my only questions. I really appreciate the presentation today and all the hard work put in by you and staff on this.
Thank you. Further questions at this time? Commissioner McGowan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just logistically, Director Murphy, if commissioners have questions that they'd like answered at the April meeting, can they submit them to you ahead of time so that your staff's ready and prepared to respond to them instead of kind of on the fly?
Of course. Yep.
Good idea. Further questions or comments? Commissioner Ackerman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Murphy. Just a couple of comments, no questions, but we've talked quite a bit lately about how complex the cumulative impacts discussion is, and appreciate your help in helping us understand that the finer points of this report. There's been a lot of good and significant work on this front since the mission change rulemaking, including the cumulative impacts reporting requirements and the regulations, alternative location analyses, wildlife mitigation, improved setbacks, and many other efforts to assess and address cumulative impacts. And so add to that to the development of CITER and the work done in this report and our continued ramping up of efforts to assess and analyze cumulative impacts. And it makes me happy to see the work that has been done and that we're continuing to do. And as you stated, we recognize that there is much more to do with regard to cumulative impacts. Last year, I believe you stated that this year's document would expand and improve, which clearly has been done. And I want to just say I appreciate that. And while you did talk about 2 data points not making a trend, this is one trend that I certainly expect to continue as we continue to iterate this report. I do very much look forward to aligning the 2 processes that we have ongoing, and very much thank you for making a pathway to make that happen, and appreciate the significant thought and discussion that's gone into how to do that. And I also wanted to just thank personally Ms. Bartlett for all of her work and continued input and help and expertise in helping us address cumulative impacts. So thank you for allowing me a little time, Mr. Chair. Oh, you are muted still, Mr. Chair.
Oh, no, I'm not. Thank you. Further questions, comments from commissioners? All right, I would remind all of our stakeholders that are listening in, some 81 of you, that the report is published on our website, and everyone should go dig in and bring thoughts, comments, questions to us. So thank you very much. All right, we will continue down our agenda. We now will take up docket 221-000-281. This is an enforcement matter. I'm not sure who was going to present with regard to this. Mr. Kirschner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, commissioners. My name is Steve Kirschner. I'm one of the commission's enforcement officers. Just a brief clarification, the proposed order that's before you today isn't actually an enforcement matter. The director filed this application pursuant to Rule 211 to compel Vision Energy to address 2 wells. The matter is somewhat novel, so I'm going to start with just a brief overview of the rule itself. The commission promulgated Rule 211 in the initial round of rulemaking that became effective in January 2021. The rule gives the director the authority to compel operators to plug and abandon a well, remediate and reclaim the location if one of 2 criteria is met. So first, if plugging and abandonment is reasonable and necessary to protect or to minimize adverse impacts to public health, safety, welfare, the environment, or wildlife resources, or second, that the well is no longer quote unquote used or useful. Now, in addition to the rule itself, the Commission gave us in the 100 series a list of factors to consider in determining whether a well is used or useful. And among those factors are the production history and the remaining economic viability of the well. So I want to look at the two wells at issue here. First, I want to discuss the Rifle Bolton well. Now, this well's been on our engineering staff's radar for quite a while. The well hasn't produced since 2014. It is overdue for an MIT, and Bradenhead tests over the last several years show pressure on the Bradenhead, which is concerning given the relatively shallow surface casing here and the proximity to both a creek and a water well. Over the course of several field inspections from 2018 through late 2022, Commission staff observed that the Bradenhead was plumbed directly into a tank. That tank was and remains open to the atmosphere. Beginning in November 2021, Commission staff reached out to Vision Energy several times to request that this well be addressed immediately. Between November 2021 and May 2022, we reached out 4 times, expressing our concerns with this well and requesting that it be plugged as soon as possible. Ultimately, in September 2022, the director issued a demand to Vision Energy pursuant to this Rule 211 to plug and abandon the Rifle Bolton well by November 1st. We cited the need to protect or minimize impacts to public health, safety, welfare, and the environment. And in the alternative, that the well was neither used nor useful based on its production history and the lack of remaining economic viability. Following that demand letter, Vision declined to commit to plug the well, which ultimately led to us filing the application in this matter. I also want to briefly discuss the Baldy Creek unit well, which is the other well that's covered by this order. This well hasn't produced since 2009. It is also overdue for Bradenhead and mechanical integrity testing. Now, Vision Energy's intent here is to perform these tests and to return the well to production. As you may have seen from the filings, staff and the director initially included this well in our application due to its production history, but our engineering staff is willing to permit Vision to test the well and to return it to production only if they can show that the well has integrity. In other words, only if it can be safely returned to production. So the stipulated order that we're presenting here requires Vision to plug and abandon the Rifle Bolton well. It also requires Vision to Bradenhead and mechanical integrity test the Baldy Creek unit well. If that mechanical integrity test fails, Vision will have 30 days to either repair or plug and abandon the well. So with that, staff and the director essentially ask that you approve the proposed order as filed to ensure that these wells are addressed and to protect or minimize impacts to public health, safety, welfare, and the environment, including wildlife resources. I'd be happy to take any questions, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Kirschner. Questions from commissioners for Mr. Kirschner? Commissioner McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Kirschner, for presenting and sharing your information. When I was reading through this, I was trying to determine if this operator is in compliance with the order that they're under. Are they substantially in compliance with the order? And if no, why are we just honing in on these 2 wells, and why aren't we talking in a larger conversation about whether or not this operator is having compliance issues?
Sure. To address the first question, to the best of our knowledge right now, Vision Energy is in compliance with the larger sort of mechanical integrity testing and plugging order to which they're subject right now. So they are in compliance. To the extent that either of these wells is included in that order, the order doesn't prescribe specifically the order in which, I'm sorry for using order twice there, but the order doesn't prescribe the order in which they have to plug or mechanical integrity test well. What we've done here is we've asked them to prioritize a well. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're out of compliance with that prior order. As we noted in the stipulated order itself, to the best of our knowledge right now, Vision is in compliance with the ongoing order.
Okay, and I guess I was surprised to see in the documentation from both parties the multiple requests from staff to take, in particular, to address the Rifle Bolton well, and the operator's seeming unwillingness to move it up in the priority list and to I guess, follow our rules, which is no flaring, no venting. This seems like a pretty significant environmental problem. And then a demand letter from the director to do so, and then a declination is, I don't know if that's the word, from the operator is a little concerning to me in the relationship that we might have with this operator. I will stop there. I guess because staff is moving this forward, that you all think this is the best path forward to address these two particular wells of concern. Yes,
We do, yes.
thank you.
Further questions from commissioners? All right, I'm not seeing
Sorry,
further.
Mr. Chair, I have one more question.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. For the Baldy Creek well, if the MIT and the Bradenhead show that there are problems and the operator decides not to fix, do they have to P&A or do they get to shut it in for an indeterminate amount of time?
No, the order requires them to plug and abandon the well
Okay.
if the testing does not show mechanical integrity.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Commissioner Ackerman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a follow-up on Commissioner McGowan's question, and I don't know if we heard staff respond to the substantial compliance with regard to, other operations with this operator, whether that's relevant to this hearing, but I would be interested in hearing a response to that as well.
Sure. So what I specified, essentially, this operator is currently subject to a multi-year compliance plan based on an order that was entered first in 2016 and later in 2021 by a hearing officer. The operator is currently in compliance with that compliance plan. Now, speaking to overall compliance issues with this operator, we're always inspecting wells, we're always observing things, our engineering staff is always reviewing filings. I can't necessarily speak to the current overall compliance status of this operator. What I'll say is that we felt that this rule and using this rule was the most efficient way to address any potential issues that we had at these two well sites. And if you had more specific questions, I'm happy to entertain those as well.
Follow up, Commissioner Ackerman?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the response. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
All right, further questions for staff? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion? Commissioner Ackerman?
Mr. Chair, I would move to approve staff's proposal on this. I'm looking for on docket number 221-000-281.
And staff's proposal is this order, I believe.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to approve the order as proposed by staff. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Kirshner, for the presentation, and this matter is concluded.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, looking at our agenda, the next matter is a motion to adjourn. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, we'll see everybody Monday evening at Trinidad State College. Stay safe.